Thank you. All right, members, I call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 122 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Finance, and pursuant to Standing Order 108, Bracket 2. The motion adopted by the committee on Thursday, September 21st, 2023, the committee is resuming its study of policy decisions and market forces that have led to increases in the cost of buying or renting a home in Canada. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format. Pursuant to the standing orders, members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. I'd like to make a few comments for the benefit of the witnesses and members. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. For those participating by video conference, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you are not speaking. Interpretation. For those on Zoom, you have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either Floor, English, or French. For those in the room, you can use the earpiece and select the desired channel. Although this room is equipped with a powerful audio system, feedback events can occur. These can be extremely harmful to our interpreters and cause serious injuries. The most common cause of sound feedback is an earpiece worn too close to the microphone. When we therefore ask all participants to exercise a high degree of caution and when handling the earpieces, especially when your microphone or your neighbor's microphone is turned on. In order to prevent incidents and safeguard the hearing health of the interpreters, I invite participants to ensure that they speak into the microphone into which their headset is plugged in, and to avoid manipulating the earbuds by placing them on the table away from the microphone when they are not in use. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. For members in the room, if you wish to speak, please raise your hand. For members on Zoom, please use the raised hand function. The clerk and I will manage the speaking order as best we can. We appreciate your patience and understanding in this regard. I'd now like to welcome our witnesses with us today. And with us on this study of policy decisions and market forces that have led to increases in the cost of buying or renting a home in Canada. We have with us the Honourable Chrystia Freeland, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. Welcome, Minister. It's great to have you here. And along with the Minister, we have the Deputy Minister for the Department of Finance, and that is Mr. Chris Forbes. Welcome, Deputy. Okay, and so we'll have time now for opening remarks, and then we will get into the members' questions.
Okay. Thank you very much. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. I am pleased to appear before you and committee members today to talk about what is the top priority for millions of Canadians today. Housing is at the center of our economic plan. We are building more homes faster. We are making it easier for Canadians who wish to buy property. And we are supporting homeowners and tenants.
We have taken further concrete action. We're lifting the GST on new rental construction to make it more affordable for builders to build. We unlocked $20 billion in new low-cost financing to build up to 30,000 new rental apartments per year. The federal government owns more land than anyone else in Canada, and we're releasing more of it to build homes on, including 2,600 homes in Calgary, Edmonton, St. John's, and Ottawa. Dans le cadre du Fonds pour...
Under the Housing Accelerator Fund, we signed agreements with the province of Quebec, as well as 10 cities across the country. But that's not all. These agreements will reduce the red tape that prevents housing from being built. In exchange, we are providing $4 billion in funding to build more than 100,000 new housing units more quickly. We also helped more than 300,000 Canadians save up for their first down payment tax-free through the new First Home Savings Account.
In our fall economic statement, which I released just 2 weeks ago, we also introduced new funding and new measures which will build more homes and protect Canadians with mortgages. We're providing $15 billion in additional low-cost financing through the Apartment Construction Loan Program, which will help build 30,000 more rental homes for Canadians. We announced an additional $1 billion through the Affordable Housing Fund, which will help nonprofit, co-op, and public housing providers to build more than 7,000 new homes. We're cracking down on short-term rentals listed on sites like Airbnb and Vrbo, which have been keeping tens of thousands of homes off the market, particularly in cities like Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal, where the housing challenge is most acute. And we're helping to cut the red tape that prevents construction workers from moving across the country to build homes, while also bringing to Canada more of the skilled trades workers that our construction sector needs. Dans l'énoncé économique de l'automne.
In our fall economic statement, we also announced the creation of a new Canada Mortgage Charter. This new charter describes the additional latitude Canadians can expect from their banks if they run into financial difficulties. Our goal is to protect Canadians, ensuring that they receive the support they need to pay down their mortgage and keep their homes if they refinance their loans at a time when interest rates are higher. These measures, announced over the last 3 months alone, are just part of our overall economic plan.
The government has a real plan to build more homes faster across Canada. The Leader of the Opposition's proposal would actually see fewer homes built across the country. He would put the tax back on rental construction. He would cut funding to cities that are trying to build more housing. And he would repeat the mistakes of the past by pulling the federal government out of home building altogether. That is exactly the opposite of what Canadians need right now. Our government has a plan, and we will keep working day after day, week after week, month after month, and year after year to build the homes that Canadians need and expect and deserve. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the MPs on the committee. Thank you also to their family members. A particularly nice presence. And I am now happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Minister Freeland. And we are going to get in questions. So in the first round, Minister, the members have up to 6 minutes to ask questions for each party. We are starting with MP Hallen for 6 minutes, please.
Thanks, Chair. Minister, have you seen our Common Sense Conservative leader's brilliant 15-minute documentary on the housing hell in Canada that's been viewed over 4 million times?
I am certainly familiar with the Conservative scheme on housing. I haven't watched the video itself.
Okay, so I would strongly encourage that you do watch it, because it's a Common Sense Conservative plan how to build more homes and not more bureaucracy. And while you're at it, maybe like, share, and subscribe so others can see a Common Sense Conservative plan on how to get housing fixed as well.
I'm happy to comment on the Conservative scheme today, in fact.
Your government's housing agency, CMHC, says that 3.5 million additional homes need to be built in Canada by 2030 to restore housing affordability. Your housing agency, the same one, the head of that agency says that, it said 2 days ago at the Senate Finance Committee, that your government has no plan to reach that number. In fact, in this committee, that same agency, your housing agency, says that that target is not attainable under current conditions because of high interest rates and because of higher costs that were caused by your government. In other words, your own housing agency has no faith in you or your government. If your own housing agency has no faith in you, why should Canadians?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Hallen. You asked me to comment on the Conservative scheme on housing.
I didn't
so
ask
let
you to
me
comment
do
on
so.
that. I made a
You,
comment.
in fact, invited me to. So let me comment.
I'd like to hear an
First of all,
answer
I
about-
would point out.
Point of order.
Point of order.
Mr. Halan, as he does every time the minister comes, asks a question or makes a statement and then refuses to allow the minister to answer. And so, Mr. Chair, I would just ask
I did
that
not ask
we allow the minister to answer the questions out of respect
thank
for
you.
the minister and the other
My
members of this
question was
committee,
not
but
about
also
the
the folks at home
documentary.
who are watching who would like to hear the answers.
The question was
Thank you,
about
MP
your
Baker.
department not having
MP
faith
Holland,
in you.
MP Holland, I am going to ask, like it did happen the last meeting, a lot of crosstalk, you jumping in when you ask a question.
The question was not about the documentary.
Out of
The question was about
you
her
ask the
department
question
not having faith
out
in
of
her.
respect and out of respect to everybody that's here.
Minister, can you please
MP Holland,
answer
MP Holland.
why Canadians
the
should
minister-
have faith in you,
MP Holland.
even though your housing
MP
agency
Holland.
doesn't? That's the question.
MP Holland.
I've asked my question.
MP Holland. You asked a question. Allow the witness to answer the question.
She's not
the
answering
witness
the
did,
question.
The witness did not even have a nanosecond answer your question.
Point of
So-
order, Mr. Chair.
Point of order.
Not only is that irrelevant and untrue, and they're not answering the question, you shut me down by adjourning the meeting improperly. So could you please let Conservatives speak? I know you don't want to hear it as a Liberal. I know you don't want to hear about the housing hell, and you should watch the video too. I might add.
MP Lawrence,
Chair, I'll ask my question again. Let's move on. I will ask my question again. It's my time, Chair. I will ask the question
In fact,
again.
actually,
Minister,
let me
your
just
housing
say,
agency has no faith
I believe
in
that
your
MP
plan.
Hallen
Why
asked me
should
a question.
Canadians?
I certainly believe the point of this exercise is for him to ask me a question. He offered quite a long
Questions on the table
preamble
3
with
times
lots
now.
of points embedded in it.
Why should
and I'd
Canadians
like to
have faith in
respond
you
to
when your
those.
own agency
if
doesn't?
Thank
MP
you,
Hallen
MP
would
Hallen.
like
That's
to
the
hear a
question.
response.
Allow the witness, please, to answer the questions.
Yeah, I'd also like to point out that Conservative senators have been reprimanded for bullying witnesses, and it would be terrible to have that kind of behavior.
Your Prime
here in the
Minister
House.
has been reprimanded for bullying strong women in his own caucus for standing up to his corruption.
So let
please spare us
me
the
now
lecture.
speak about housing. And let me first point out that there is an internal contradiction in what the Conservative members of this committee have done when it comes to voting and their purported
irrelevant to
scheme
my
on
question.
housing. Actually,
Point
I
of
believe
order,
that your
Mr. Chair.
votes are very
Point of
relevant.
order.
There has to be,
Question
you
was
have
clear.
to stop interrupting.
Yeah.
Stop interrupting.
Point.
So I'll move
point-
on.
point
I'll
of
move
order.
on.
No, I
I'll
haven't
actually move-
finished
I'll move-
answering.
I'll move on. It's my time, and I only
No,
have limited time.
I'm afraid
So-
actually it's time for
so,
questions and answers,
Minister-
MP Hallen, so I would like
Minister,
to answer
This is
because
the
I have
reason
things
why,
to say
and this
about
is
housing
exactly
because
the
we have a
reason
plan.
why your non-answer proves why Canadians and your own housing agency has no faith in your government to
Point of order.
meet the target.
Point of order.
What this
Point of order.
proves is that the Conservatives do not
not a
want to
point
actually
of
listen
order.
to the
Point of
answers.
order.
Not
the
a point
point
of
of order is, excuse me.
Point of order. I'll listen
Excuse
to-
me. I have listened to you interrupt the minister and not allow her to
Debate.
speak.
That's
I
not a
have the
point of
right
order, Mr.
to make
Chair.
a
That's
point
not
of
a
order.
point
Now
of
I'm
order.
being interrupted and heckled during my point of order. Please, Chair, please, I'm asking you. Minister Freeland has the right to respond to
This
the
is not
questions
a point
that
of
are
order,
put
Mr.
to,
Chair.
and this is not. This is
Do
a
your
point
job.
of. Now I'm being heckled and interrupted.
It's not a
during
point
my
of order.
Point of
This
order.
is a breach of process.
This is.
Thank you, MP. Yeah, okay.
It's
The
not a point of
witnesses
order.
have.
Here's, okay.
I will move on.
MP
I can't,
Lawrence and MP
Chair.
Holland.
This has descended so badly now that I'm being
Yes.
interrupted during my point of order.
Yes. Okay. Members, first off, stop the crosstalk, okay? Stop the crosstalk.
I'll
And the
move on.
other thing is, MP Holland, MP Lawrence, any MP, is we have interpreters here. You know, there's a lot of screaming going on. If members screaming into the mics, I think in my opening remarks I explained the danger, the health and safety to our interpreters. So I would ask, that is with crosstalk, that is with screaming, that is with not having respect and decorum here in this room. I think that is what we want.
Point of order.
Yeah, we are looking
Point
for
of order.
respect and decorum. Point of
Please
order,
don't
MP Lawrence.
crosstalk. And I raised my voice at a reasonable tone, and you did not recognize it last meeting. So that's why I have to raise my voice, because I'm hoping you'll hear me, Chair.
I can hear you, MP Lawrence.
Chair,
I can MP
Chair, with respect, I'd like to move on to my next question. So we can agree that Canadians and your own housing agency don't have faith in your government, which they've already outlined, and that's why after your government spent $89 billion on photo op funds for housing promises that have not been actualized, rents, mortgages, the amount of down payment needed on a house has all doubled in just 8 years. This was never there before your government, and it certainly won't be there afterwards. Canadians are living in a housing hell and a cost of living crisis. 2 million Canadians are going into a food bank in a single month just in 8 years. There's a 100% increase in food bank usage. A third of those kids are kids that are starving because of high taxes like the carbon tax and other factors that have been caused by your government. The number one reason for food bank usage is because of the housing unaffordability that your government has created. 10 cities across this country, there are nurses living in their cars, there are students living under bridges. That's 8 years after your government. Why should anyone believe that anything that your government has done is actually helping addressing the affordability crisis?
Thank you for the question. Let me just start by saying Canadians know the Conservatives cannot be trusted when it comes to protecting the most vulnerable people in Canada. Since we formed government, 2.3 million Canadians have been lifted out of poverty,
2
and
million
our
are going to a
government
food
has
bank
particularly.
in a single month.
I'm sorry, Mr. Hallen. I'm speaking about poverty in Canada, which you purport to care about and which you purport to have addressed in your question. And I'd like to finish my answer, please.
It was about food banks.
The Canada Child Benefit has had a huge impact on Canadian families and is having an impact today, lifting millions and millions out of poverty, and the statistics show that. Our early learning and child care program
Minister,
is
the
helping
question
Canadians.
was clear. I'll have to
You
move on
asked
because I have a limited amount
No,
of time.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You haven't given me a chance to answer, and that
with all
is
of
not
that,
only rude,
2 million
it's
Canadians are
inappropriate
still
at
going into
committee.
food bank. I'll just ask my last question because my time is limited. Your government promised by Thanksgiving that the price of food would go down. A scathing report came out this morning on the food index saying that food costs are going up, driven up also by your carbon tax because you're taxing farmers and those that are shipping the food and storing the food. Those people going into a food bank are increasing because of food costs and housing costs caused by your government. 83% actually that are going to food banks are working families. That's a phenomenon that we've never seen in this country before. So you promised on Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving went by, food prices didn't come down. We thought maybe you meant the U.S. Thanksgiving. That went by as well. Nothing happened. It's almost Christmas time, and there's literally kids in this country asking Santa not for gifts, but just for food that they could put on their table. On what date will food prices actually come down so Canadians can afford to eat? And when will you axe the tax so people can put food on their table and heat their homes?
So let me just be clear. I've been repeatedly interrupted, and what we see is that Conservatives are interested in posturing. They're not interested in asking actual questions. But let me be clear. Canadians know that Conservatives only believe in cuts, 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 particularly for the most vulnerable among us. And that is why our government is so committed to supporting the most vulnerable, to supporting children. 2.3 million Canadians lifted out of poverty. The Canada Child Benefit, money directly for the most vulnerable children in our country. And when it comes to housing, the purported subject of this meeting, let me just be clear that the Conservative purported scheme actually would go backwards on housing. It would actually put the GST back on the construction of rental housing that we need. This is not a scheme. This is putting Canada into reverse, when actually what we need to do is build more homes faster.
Thank you, Minister. The time is up now, and so just on the timing, as members know. Each party has 6 minutes. If a question is asked when there's like 5.5 minute mark or 5:40, and the witness then is answering, the time will go over the 6 minutes. And that is as we have the practice that we have kept here on this committee, and that's what we will continue to keep doing unless the members decide otherwise. And now we are moving to MP Zerowitz, please. Yeah, quick point of order.
Well, I know Conservatives for a long time. I know because I've supported these calls, have wanted to see the minister come here not on a government bill, but as part of one of our studies. What I didn't realize was that Mr. Hallan wanted her here to perform a monologue in front of her and not to actually have a conversation. I wonder perhaps...
This is not a point of order.
Perhaps the committee...
This is not a point of order.
Perhaps the committee
Mr. Chair.
could invest in some gold stickers or something to assuage Mr. Halon's ego so that
Amen.
next time
This
we
is
have
not a
this
point of
time we can
order.
have a
Come
proper
on now.
conversation.
This is not a point
Thank
of
you,
order.
MP Blakey. We just
Trying to be constructive, guys.
But yeah, we are trying to have. We
Point-
do have the minister.
Point
we
of
do have
order.
the minister
Point of order.
here.
I'm calling a point of order.
Point
You
of
have
order.
to recognize
yes,
me.
Yeah, of course, MP Howard.
It is any member's right to do whatever they would like with their time. And just because, Liberals and the NDP or the minister doesn't like what I do with my time, it's still my time.
Yeah.
So I would hope that you would appreciate that.
It
We
is
can
your-
ask what we want.
It is your
and
time.
if we're not having
MP
an
Howard,
answer given,
it is
we
your
should
time.
have the right to move on.
Yeah, it is your time. We just ask that all members do, use their time, this valuable time that we have with the minister, in a respectful way, and we have decorum here at our committee. MP Zarowitz, please, it's your time now.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank the Deputy Prime Minister for being here today. I do want to start off with two things. On the record, Mr. Chair, I also want to say the Conservatives keep on asking our Deputy Prime Minister to attend, but not giving her a chance to respond. So it's very sad to hear that the Conservatives are afraid to hear the facts directly from the Deputy Prime Minister and are willing to talk over her and interrupt her. I don't know why she would ever accept an invitation from us if this is what's going to happen. I'm also going to say I am absolutely appalled that there was an accusation about our Prime Minister being a bully to former female members of Parliament. It is an appalling accusation and completely untrue, and that needs to be stated as well. And perhaps what I'll begin, Deputy Prime Minister Freeland, I know that there were a number of things that were mentioned by my Conservative colleagues. Is there anything that you want to respond to before I actually get into my questions?
Yes, thank you very much, MP Jarowitz. And I must say, Mr. Blakey was exactly right in saying that if committee members prefer to engage in monologues, then there doesn't seem to be much point in actually gathering as a committee. I do think that it is worth putting on the record that there is a clear contradiction in the Conservatives' purported scheme on housing, because their scheme, at least ostensibly, would cut back on the elimination of the GST on the construction of purpose-built rental, which we have put forward and which is already leading to more homes being built. And yet the Conservative members of this committee in the House of Commons voted to support our complete elimination of the GST on purpose-built rental apartments. So I think it would actually be useful to understand the thinking behind that contradictory position. I think it may also be worth me reading into the record a conclusion from an economist who is generally seen as one of Canada's preeminent housing experts, Professor Mike Moffat. He has described the Conservative proposal as, quote, an exceptionally weak response to the housing crisis, riddled with loopholes. And he has gone on to say, quote, this is a sign that the Conservatives don't understand the urgency or scale of the housing crisis. Those are not my words. Those are the words of an independent expert. And I'm now happy to answer your questions.
As you know, the residents of my riding of Davenport, and indeed all Canadians, would say housing is one of their top issues and very concerned about it. You've, in your opening statement, you've mentioned broadly many of the initiatives that we've undertaken. We've heard at this committee a lot of testimony that there's been issues at different levels of government that has stopped many people want to build from building affordable housing, rental housing. Can you speak more specifically about how you're addressing some of the structural issues that result in the structural shortage of housing supply?
For sure, and thank you for the question. Look, clearly one of the challenges with housing is the current economic environment, the current macroeconomic environment, and that's why our government is there with support for financing. We want to make the math work for home builders, and that's what we've done. Lifting the GST on purpose-built rental, Professor Moffat estimates that will add between 200 and 300,000 more. That will lead to between 200 and 300,000 more homes to be built. The apartment construction loan program, to which we topped up with an additional $15 billion in the fall economic statement, that program in its entirety will lead to 100,000 homes being built. Before the fall economic statement, we announced an additional $20 billion in the Canada Mortgage Bond Financing Program, and that is going to lead over the next 5 years alone to another 150,000 new homes being built. You spoke, Ms. Jarowitz, about also sort of the structural obstacles to new homes being built. And I think we all agree that there is red tape, there are restrictions on zoning that as a country we need to work together to lift. That is where the Housing Accelerator Fund comes in. It is a fund that allows us to work collaboratively with municipalities across the country to help them design tailored measures that work for their communities to get more homes built faster, and that it provides financing to help them do precisely that. I'm very glad that this fund is being rolled out quickly and aggressively across the country. Already, more than 100,000 new homes will be built through this fund, and we're going to keep on reaching constructively, collaboratively agreements with municipalities across the country.
Thank you. And then I just have one more quick question. Millions of my residents, not millions, millions of Canadians are going to be renewing their mortgage this year. And they're worried. They're worried because the interest rates are so high, and they're worried about whether or not they're going to be able to afford to renew their mortgage. Is there anything that we have put into place that's going to be helpful to Canadians at this point?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And I think all of us as members of Parliament, we talk with our constituents, and I'm sure all of us have heard from people who are really anxious about the renewal of their mortgages. That's why in the fall economic statement, for the first time in Canadian history, we published the Canadian Mortgage Charter. It's very simple. It's in black and white, and it tells Canadians what they have the right to expect from their financial institutions, the kinds of tailored relief and support they have the right to expect when they're renewing their mortgages. And that is really about being sure people understand the tools that are available to them. A couple of the key measures are people have the right to talk to their financial institution about perhaps extending the amortization period. That could lead to a smaller monthly payment at this time of really challenging circumstances. Another element there is for insured mortgages, you do not need to requalify in order to go and look for renewing at a different financial institution. Again, that's just to give people a little bit more choice, a little more flexibility.
Thank you, MP Zarowitz. And now to MP Samari, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Madame la Ministre.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, thank you very much for being here today to answer our questions. I'd also like to greet Mr. Forbes. We appreciate you being here as well. Mr. Forbes, in the second hour, I will be asking some more technical questions about this file. And Minister, I'd also like to get you those questions by email. But just in the first hour, I have some more general questions on housing. First, I'd like to ask you a question about the fall economic statement, in particular, the document that the Parliamentary Budget Officer published this morning on your fall economic statement. In Chart 5, there's a chart about spending review, the cuts that are being planned. If I may clarify, when you talk about Table 5, is this in the fall economic statement? No, in the document by the Parliamentary Budget Officer. So he's going over spending. $1.3 billion are being cut from Crown corporations, including CBC Radio-Canada. If you've read the news, it says that when you asked for $125 million in cuts, job layoffs were announced. CBC Radio-Canada was, of course, very affected. We know that this will undermine the public broadcaster as well as local coverage, and this will worsen the news situation for Francophone minorities outside Quebec. I'd like for you to comment on the situation at CBC Radio-Canada, and can you commit to not asking CBC Radio-Canada to make cuts? Thank you for that question. First, I will say that I don't have this morning's document before me, the document by the Parliamentary Budget Officer. As such, I cannot give specific answers to that part of your question. But I share your concerns about Radio-Canada. I agree that Radio-Canada and CBC play an important role across Canada. Our democracy depends on journalism. And especially public journalism. So I agree with the idea that you included in your question, the idea that Radio-Canada has a specific role for Quebec, for Francophones throughout Canada, for the Quebec nation. I agree with that principle. We know that Radio-Canada has a lot of viewers and a lot of listeners in Quebec and among Francophones outside Quebec. So it's an important entity. I agree with the principles you brought up. I share your concerns. All medias are going through a difficult time right now. The economic situation facing the media is a challenging one, and that is why our government is insisting on further discussions with web giants. I'm not going to specifically talk about what the Parliamentary Budget Officer brought up, but I can assure you that our government and me personally, as a former journalist, we all agree with you about the importance of journalism and its importance to democracy, and we all agree that Radio-Canada plays a special role in Canada, in Quebec, and among the Canadian francophonie. Thank you. So, given you share this principle, I wonder if you or the government might make a commitment, especially with 600 jobs on the chopping block at CBC Radio-Canada. Now, regarding C56, you brought up Mr. Moffat's remarks. When you appeared on C56, I asked you whether your department would provide statistics about what is forecasting for the GST freeze on rental housing. To the best of my knowledge, the committee never received those numbers. So if you could please follow up, I would very much appreciate that. One idea I would like to bring up just regarding the construction of social and cooperative housing. You have promised subsidies, but right now interest rates are very high. As such, one possibility would be to create reduced interest rates for social or cooperative housing, either through the CMHC or through the federal government. Currently, the federal interest rate, as I understand, is 3.66%. If it were perhaps reduced to 2%, and then the government would make up the difference, then for $1 billion in financing, only $16 million would be paid in interest, pennies on the dollar. So this would really break up the logjam and get things moving. This is just an idea that I would like to suggest. I wonder if you could comment on it. Thank you for your work, for that question. Well, in theory, you are talking about the fundamental ideas that underpin almost all targeted housing programs by the federal government. In my opening remarks, I talked about $20 billion added to low-cost financing. Under this program, there would be a lower interest rates for companies that build housing. What is more, the program, to which we contributed $15 billion in the fall economic statement for apartment construction, well, that's exactly what you proposed. This program supports the financing for the construction of rental housing. This program has two objectives. First, to create an economic environment in which companies will build more rental housing as opposed to condos. In other words, to change the calculus, because we believe that Canadians need more rental housing. Especially the less well-off would benefit from this. Through the program, we hope to build more rental housing in general, but among these apartments, there's an affordable housing component as well. So the program would build affordable housing as part of its operations. You are right. What you propose is one way the federal government could incentivize the construction of housing. It's an effective technique, and it is one we are actively using. Thank you, MP St. Marie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, good to have you here at committee. Last time you were here, we talked about nonprofit projects that were already in stream for federal funding and the possibility of applying the GST rebate to those projects. And I had asked you and your officials to provide information to the committee on how many projects there were and what the estimated cost of doing that would be. Can you share with the committee when we might expect to receive that information?
It's a good question. It's something that we are looking at. I will say, though, that our primary objective is to put in place policies that will lead to new projects being put in motion, for the obvious reason that it's good to have incentives to create new projects rather than to be adding on the incentives to projects that are already in train. And I would like to take the opportunity to say I have looked carefully initially on your motion on the financialization of housing. And as I'm sure you have noted, one of the points that you raised in your motion was around the short-term rental business. I hope you have noted, and I'm glad to do so publicly, that we have subsequently acted in that area. I think it's a really good point. And I think all of us who care about the housing situation, we're focused on getting more homes built. That's a good thing. But it takes a while to build a home. And the great thing about the short-term rental, which you yourself pointed out here, is those are homes that exist right now. And if we can move them into the longer-term rental market, that's progress. So I just want to say thank you for singling that out for attention.
Fair enough. And I would just like to underline again that some of these nonprofit housing projects that have successfully been awarded federal funds aren't proceeding because of higher interest rates, hence why applying the GST rebate would help get units that otherwise won't be built. What I'd like is for the committee to have the information on what those projects are and what the estimated cost would be of extending the GST rebate to them. When can the committee expect to get that information?
Good question. Something certainly worth looking at. And one thing I would also say to all MPs here is we're all familiar with projects in our own ridings. If people would like to point out to me, not right now, but any specific projects that they think are worthy projects that are running into some obstacles, do please bring those particular ones to my attention.
Absolutely. In the meantime, I'd just like to know if your department has run a list of those projects and estimated the cost of applying the GST rebate to them.
So as I've said, a very worthwhile question. I do want to emphasize everyone, there was strong support. I quoted Mike Moffat, but not just from him, strong support across the country on the total elimination of the GST. And I've heard from a lot of people that it's getting more homes built. Everyone, obviously, would like easing tax measures to be retrospective. And there are a lot of people talking about that. As I said, my bias is towards doing things leaning into the future so that we can create an incentive for even more homes to be built. I am happy to talk to people about specific affordable housing projects that are in a challenging situation right now.
Right on. Well, we would be happy to get that information promptly. One of the issues that my colleague Lori Idlout has raised a lot is about housing in Nunavut. And of course, there has been some distinctions-based funding awarded to Inuit governments that operate in Nunavut. But when it comes to the territorial government that also has an infrastructure deficit and does serve a slightly different population, because it is a different jurisdiction after all. And the federal government's answer has always been for the territorial government to apply to national Indigenous organizations to access that funding for their territory. But there is clearly a need for more resources for the territorial government that's been estimated around $250 million. Is that something your government is looking at announcing in the next budget?
I'm not making any budget announcements today, for sure. Very happy to continue discussions about areas that it would be good to focus on in the budget. And I will say, just to your specific question, our government believes, as I hope everyone here does, that a distinctions-based approach is really important. It's an important part of reconciliation. We also do have good conversations with the governments of the provinces and territories across the country, very much including Nunavut. And I think we need to be doing both. We need to be having conversations on both of those paths.
But you do recognize the difference between Indigenous government and territorial government and the need for both to be adequately resourced in order to meet the housing needs of their population.
As I've said, we have a distinctions-based approach. I think that's important, and that's an important part of reconciliation. We also recognize that one of the important things on housing and a plethora of other issues is for the federal government to work constructively with provinces and territories across the country, very much including Nunavut.
I know in your opening comments.
MP Blakey, yeah, that is the time for our first round. So we are moving into our second round. Members, as we always do, we do not have full time for a full second round, but we did start a couple of minutes late. So I'm looking at between all parties, each party will have approximately 4 minutes now with the minister to ask questions. So we'll be 4 minutes per party on the second round. We're starting with MP Chambers for 4 minutes, please.
Merry Christmas, Minister. Welcome back. Mr. Forbes, congratulations on your new role.
Merry Christmas, Mr. Chambers. And I do want to say, I thought Mr. Lawrence was going to ask me a question, and I was going to take the opportunity to say Merry Christmas to his son, James, who's here with us.
Thank you very much.
Merry Christmas, James. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Minister.
Minister, 250,000 Canadians have opened a first home savings account, as I understand. Can you provide to the committee how many deposits have been made to those accounts?
Let me start with a correction. It's actually 300,000 Canadians who have opened first home savings accounts, and so that's a really good positive number. What that says is there are 300,000 Canadians, by definition, principally young Canadians, because it has to be for your first home, who have actually who are actually saying, I want to buy my home and I'm saving money for it. That's really positive.
Can we get the amount of deposits to those accounts, Minister?
Well, let me just start by ensuring that we're all clear that it's 300,000, not 250,000. That's a material difference.
So you'll commit to providing the committee with the deposits?
I am always happy to update Canadians on the first home savings account, which our government put in place, which was opened in April, and makes a real difference for Canadians and shows young Canadians, 300,000 of them, believe in saving for their first home.
Thank you very much. The mortgage charter. Uninsured mortgage holders don't have to go through the stress test. Insured mortgage, why are we not giving the same relief? Why is your government not giving the same relief to insured mortgage holders? Why do they still have to go through the stress test on a renewal? There's 1.2 million, at least 1.2 million households that are insured mortgage holders.
Again, Mr. Chambers, and I don't mean this in an argumentative way, but you have it the wrong way around. It's insured mortgage holders who don't need to. It's insured mortgage holders who don't need to requalify.
I apologize.
That's an important distinction.
It is a very important distinction, and I apologize for mixing that up. Why do uninsured mortgage holders have to go through the stress test? There's at least 1.2 million uninsured mortgage holders.
So it is important not to confuse the two because there's a very big distinction. Insured mortgages, by definition, are insured. And so that means that but I'm underscoring this because the initial question was wrong. And when you talk to OSFI and the regulators who are responsible for determining the sanctity of our financial system, they make a very clear distinction between insured and uninsured mortgages, and that's the reason for the different treatment.
Thank you very much. But by definition, uninsured mortgage holders are less likely to default because they've provided at least 20% down or more. So why are you forcing them to go through the stress test?
Again, let's be clear on the responsibilities that our Superintendent of Financial Institutions has for guaranteeing the sanctity of the Canadian banking system. And as Canadians, we should be really proud that we have a safe and stable banking system. I have a lot of respect for our institutions, and I always will.
Thank you, Minister.
Insured mortgages, by definition, have an insurance policy that backstops them. That creates a very different impact on our financial system.
I appreciate your response.
Thank you.
The Canada Growth Fund is supposed to be an independent arm's-length fund. Was it appropriate that a Minister of the Crown, that you appeared at the first investment of the Canada Growth Fund when PSP Investments is supposed to manage this fund on an arm's-length basis?
So I'm, of course, very familiar with the structure of the Canada Growth Fund because our government created it. And it was our government's decision to structure it as we did because we know that the professionals at PSP know how to make investments. And
do you show up to CPPIB investment announcements?
The CPPIB is very differently structured from the Canada Growth Fund.
Well, they're both arm's length.
Well, the CPPIB also has a provincial role. So the CPP and the Canada PIB and the Canada Growth Fund are entirely different in their structure. The Canada Growth Fund was created by our government. It was our idea to structure it as we did. I believe that it is very important right now at a time when there is a race in the world for investments
I appreciate
No, you didn't give
the
me a
question.
chance to finish, actually.
The Canada Infrastructure Bank.
That is the time. So,
A brief point of order, Mr. Chair.
Point of order.
As generally, it's my understanding that we should get time in respect to the amount of seats we have in the House, especially when it is administers, as I've raised this point of order before. It should be Conservatives getting 5 minutes or at least 6 minutes because we have considerable more seats, with all due respect to my colleagues from the NDP and the Bloc Québécois.
So MP Lawrence, I'll speak to that, and I think listen. So I will speak to that, and it has been the practice for 2 years at this committee that when we do not have enough time to do a full round, that we, in a very cordial way and, amongst parties, are able to then share that time. That is what we are running up to against that time right now. So that is why, before we started this round, I said that each party, because we didn't have enough time for a full round, would have 4-ish minutes, and that's what we just did with MP Chambers, as we will do with the other members, and that is a practice that it is up to the members, but that is a practice that I feel has boded well for our community, I believe, for our committee here, And but members, if they think otherwise, they may decide otherwise. But
Okay,
right now we're continuing.
Just a brief point of order.
We're continuing with the way that we've always done it.
Just a brief point of order.
Yes.
I'll reserve on that with respect to my colleagues, and maybe in committee business we can talk about that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, MP Lawrence.
On that point of order,
Point of order, yes, MP Morantz.
At 11:45, there was 15 minutes left, which would have left enough time for 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 2.5, and 2.5, which would have been the conventional second round.
Again, MP Morantz, that would be breaking up a full second round. We're eating up time here, actually, as we speak. But that would be breaking up time from what is a conventional second round, which has a full second round, has 5, 5, 2.5, 2.5, 5, 5. And as you know, we have not been super stringent in terms of cutting people off right at the minute. Actually, I've given a lot of latitude and a lot of leeway to be able to have more time, so we can have fulsome answers and discussion here. So, on that, but that could be a conversation for another time. At this time, I think members want to get to ask questions of the minister for the precious time that we have right now, and I'm going to go to MP Weiler for 4 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair, and a special thank you to Minister Freeland for joining our committee to give testimony on the study that we're doing on the financialization of housing. And it's important because housing is absolutely top of mind for all Canadians and certainly my constituents. Because we've seen the rising cost of rent causing stress and many feeling like they're not going to ever be able to afford a home. And so, Minister, I was hoping you could speak to the work that our government is doing to build more homes in my province of British Columbia.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Mr. Wheeler, for the question. And as you know very well, BC is one of the provinces where the housing crisis is the most acute. And I think we are all rightly very focused on that. I do also want to take a chance, since we're talking about BC, to thank the provincial government of BC for their very collaborative approach and for their very strong housing program. They're a great partner for us, and we very much have BC in mind when we're designing housing programs and are try very hard where we have shared objectives, which is pretty much everywhere, to build programs that work together. One example of that is our measures on Airbnb and short-term rentals. That's a place where the government of BC has really been leaning in. And we looked at what was the toolbox that we had at Finance federally that we could use to help strengthen the BC measures. And I must say, I was very pleased to read in the Toronto Star, a real estate agent quoted over the weekend who said that he is seeing a real change in the housing market in Victoria. And he attributed that to people who had been holding apartments as short-term rental, understanding that is no longer economical, and releasing them into the market. So that's just one specific example of how cracking down on short-term rental can provide immediate relief in some of the most stressed housing markets in the country, including BC. Just last week, I was in Vancouver at a project for the construction of affordable housing. 231 units in the downtown east side. And what I'd like to particularly point out to this committee and to the Canadians who may be watching us is I first went to that project 2 years ago when it was empty land and shovels were going into the ground. And I went there last week, and it's almost finished. And by the way, the people building those homes were really proud of the work they were doing. They went out of their way to say it really gives them personal satisfaction to be building affordable homes. These are really nice places. A lot of them have beautiful mountain views. They're right in downtown Vancouver. Studio unit for starting at $500 a month. And I saw a 2-bedroom, which was really nice, for $750 a month. So we need to do much, much more, but it is possible to build affordable housing in the cities where it is needed the most. And maybe I'll give a shout out to the Vancouver Chinatown Foundation, which was instrumental in doing this. Let me also maybe give a shout out to the city of Kelowna. They now have a Housing Accelerator Fund deal that includes making city lands available for affordable housing and having more homes built near transit. And let me just also point out that we are very keen in BC to see the impact of the lifting of the GST on purpose-built rental and the impact of the addition of an additional $20 billion to the Canada Mortgage Bond Program. We definitely need more apartments in BC, and those two programs will lead to a lot more being built. Thanks.
You, MP Weiler. That is the time, and now we're off to MP Saint-Marie, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. D'abord, je tiens à vous informer.
Thank you, Chair. First, I'd like to inform you that I will be sharing my time with my friend Mike, who will be expressing certain very important values. So please stop me after 2 minutes, and the remaining 2 minutes will go to Mike. Madam Minister, regarding housing, your measures on Airbnb were great. Land management, to use federal land for social housing, another great measure. Many witnesses came before the committee to remind us of the need for an acquisition fund to take current rental housing off the market so it can be sheltered from the financialization of housing and remain affordable. That is an important measure. In the fall economic update, I got the sense that you stole certain ideas from the bill by the Conservative leader, stating that if municipalities don't build enough housing, you will cut infrastructure funding to them or other funding sources. That I'm quite concerned about. With interest rates, we have seen housing starts reduce greatly in Quebec. That's not municipalities' fault, but it is leading to delays. I'd like for you to clarify this measure you propose, where you threaten to cut off transfers to municipalities if they don't build enough housing. Thank you for that question. You touched on a lot of different points, so I'm going to just make one point about the use of federal land. Something I would like to highlight is that the federal government owns a great deal of land, but so do provinces and municipalities. With a collaborative approach between the federal government, the provincial governments, and municipalities, together we can build more. I just mentioned the agreement we signed with the city of Kelowna. Kelowna will be contributing the public land it owns. I think this is a good idea that we can work towards together wherever possible. Regarding our approach to municipalities, in general, we prefer working in collaboration with municipalities. We understand that they are facing difficulties. That is why we set up the Accelerator Fund for municipalities. We have an asymmetric agreement set up with Quebec, so it has its own housing agreement of $900,000. But in the rest of Canada, we are in negotiations with municipalities. We are bringing mayors throughout Canada to the table. We believe this is the right approach. Yes, the federal government does have one point of view. Oh, okay.
Yeah, Saint-Marie is sharing time, so MP Morris, please.
Merci, Monsieur Saint-Marie.
Thank you, Mr. Saint-Marie.
You being here, I'd like to ask about needed investments in housing from the federal government, starting with a recognition that back in the 1970s, 40% of all housing starts had federal assistance. Our Minister of Housing has publicly said that both Liberal and Conservative governments have reduced funding to the point that's partly caused the crisis we're in. Our current social housing stock, as you know, is 3.5%. CMHC has called out the $3.5 million affordability gap by 2030. And the governor of the Bank of Canada has said that investments in housing supply are not inflationary. In fact, the opposite. Yet in the fall economic statement, we only saw $100 million new dollars, at least in the next 2 fiscal years. Can you comment on what the hesitation from your perspective is in not putting in place more ambitious investments in housing to at least start by, say, doubling social housing, which would only put us to the middle of the G7?
So look, thank you for the thoughtful question. And I would just say, I think we agree on the objectives and the need. And I would point to the really aggressive approach we've taken in housing since the beginning of this fall session. Completely eliminating the GST on construction of all purpose-built rental. That was a very big step. We did that in September. Adding $20 billion to the Canada mortgage bonds, again, really big step. I am already hearing from builders across the country that will lead to more purpose-built rental, including affordable housing being built. And with due respect, and I don't mean that in a snarky way, I mean that in like a really serious way, the adding $15 billion to the apartment construction fund, that is making a difference right now. That fund was initially had $25 billion. $17 billion has already been committed. And so what we did in the fall economic statement is add another $15 billion. So it's $40 billion in total. And that money, putting that money in there is having an impact right now because people, when they begin projects, people beginning a project, proposing it at the end of 23 or the beginning of 24, it takes them a while to have the plans, to have the permitting. And now they know that there is money in that fund that they can apply for and build their plans around. So that is money that's going to make a difference today. But that's actually true. It's really true.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And now this will be our final questioner of the minister, and it will be MP Blakey. You'll have the final time.
Minister, in your opening remarks, I think, or one of your answers here so far, you made reference to the new mortgage charter. And I'm wondering if you could explain for the committee what the legal consequences of a financial institution disregarding the mortgage charter are.
We developed the mortgage charter in collaboration with financial institutions. It's been, and I would say, a cooperative approach. What we have found is financial institutions actually share our government's view, and I'm going to presume here, but I don't think much, your view also, that we want Canadians to keep their homes. Financial institutions do not want people to lose their homes. So we believe that the mortgage charter is something financial institutions are able to abide by and supportive of because we developed it together with them. What I thought was really important was to have it down in black and white because I at least have found there are elements in there that people just don't know about, and not knowing about it is causing real stress and anxiety.
But there are, strictly speaking, no consequences for financial institutions disregarding the charter.
We actually have been stepping up, as I know you know, our enforcement abilities in the financial sector. We are now setting up, and this is something that consumer finance NGOs have been calling for a long time, a fully independent ombudsman that Canadians can go to when they have concerns about their financial institution. That has never been the case. Financial institutions have been able to pick and choose. We're creating a fully independent ombudsman. I think that's going to help people.
Will the charter be a legally enforceable document?
The charter is published here by the finance minister. Canadians can see it and refer to it. They can use it when they refer to the ombudsman and to the Consumer Financial Agency of Canada.
On the question, I'm going to take that as a no, unless you tell me I'm wrong. I am curious in this question about the stress test, though, because it does seem to me that requiring somebody who has an uninsured mortgage to renew with the same institution, even if it's a higher rate than other rates that are available in the market, is probably not very helpful unless the goal is to increase the odds of default for uninsured mortgage holders. So can you explain why the decision was made to move ahead eliminating the stress test for one category of mortgage holders and not the other?
So there is, of course, and I know you know this, there's no requirement to renew at the same institution. The distinction is if you have an insured mortgage, you do not need to pass the stress test again. I think that gives people comfort, confidence, ease of shopping around. What is another consideration that I think we all need to bear in mind is the safety and security of the Canadian financial system overall. That is an important consideration. That's something that the Superintendent of Financial Institutions is principally charged with. But we take his opinion seriously, and Canadians, the Canadian financial system and the institutions that maintain it really have stood the test of time. We saw that in 2008.
But on that point, like if Joe has an uninsured mortgage with Bank X and he wouldn't pass the stress test, he can get a mortgage at a higher rate with Bank X again, which is not going to be better from the point of view of making his mortgage payments. So why would we require him with an uninsured mortgage to have to do the stress test to get a lower rate, which would actually make it more likely that he doesn't lose his mortgage? I don't understand why we would make it harder for someone to get a lower rate while allowing them to renew at a higher rate with the same institution. There's a circle that doesn't square there for me. Perhaps you could shed some light on that.
Our intention is to provide comfort for people who currently have mortgages, to make it, first of all, to reduce the anxiety, and also to help give them options and tools that allow them to stay in their homes. That is what the mortgage charter is about. I would also say, as we all know, the key issue here is the interest rate. And that is why, and we haven't really been talking about it, although it's been the subtext of our entire conversation of housing. That is why our government is really focused on doing our part to create the financial circumstances that allow prices to stabilize, such that interest rates can move from their current contractionary position. And I think we need to have that very much in mind when we're talking about anything to do with the economy, and particularly anything to do with housing.
And thank you, Deputy Prime Minister Freeland. Thank you, MP Blakey. We thank you for your testimony, and also thank you, Deputy Forbes. Although you'll be sticking around with us for the second hour, but we thank you for your testimony. And so, members, we are going to suspend for 5 minutes as we transition into our second panel. Thank you. Members, if we could just keep the volume down, the chatter. Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, so pursuant to Standing Order 108 Bracket 2 and the motion adopted by the committee on Thursday, September 21st, 2023, the committee is resuming its study of policy decisions and market forces that have led to increases in the cost of buying or renting a home in Canada. And so with us today for the second hour, well, he was also here with the first hour, we have the Deputy Minister, Chris Forbes. Welcome. Also with the Assistant Deputy Minister, Federal Provincial Relations and Social Policy Branch, Alice McDermott is with us. Welcome, Ms. McDermott. And the Assistant Deputy Minister, Financial Sector Policy Branch, Graham Johnson has joined us. So thank you for being with us here for members' questions. I do have a point that the MP Chambers would like.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. I'll be very quick. FCAC was invited by the clerk to appear on this study. They have declined that invitation, suggesting that they're not responsible for the mortgage study, or they have no responsibility. I think that's not correct. So I'd just like to seek unanimous consent from the committee to reissue the invitation to FCAC, the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada.
Yeah, can I just, MP Chambers, just allow the clerk to kind of give a little background and just speak to that, if you can. Thank you.
Of course. So I'll be paraphrasing here because they called me. They didn't send an official email, but they had a chat with me, and they were saying that housing is not within their mandate. They're more about regulating the banks and overseeing the compliance of financial institutions and financial literacy in Canada, amongst many other things. They said that was in their mandate, so they politely declined our invitation.
Okay. And Mr. Chair, if I may, I believe they're involved in discussions on mortgage amortizations, extensions with the banks. They also are part of the mortgage charter discussion. So in my view, they're very relevant to have here. And so I'd just like to seek unanimous consent to invite them to appear with no date, but as part of the study.
Yeah, so that the clerk can reach out. The clerk will reach out again. MP Zerowitz?
I mean, in theory, I don't have a problem with that. I just find it odd that you have sort of the agency coming back and saying that, but they're not mentioning that they're actually in charge of that. Can we not sort of put it to them to say you're also in charge of mortgage amortization and all these other things?
Clerk, yeah. So that could be added to the email or whatever. So
yeah, but just add that. Because you are in charge of X, X, and X. That is the reason we're inviting you. If that's okay. Thank you.
I think that is fair. So, members, we're going to get right into the rounds. There are no opening remarks, and we are starting with 6 minutes with MP Morantz, please.
And I want to thank our witnesses for being here today. I want to start with, yesterday I saw a story in the Global News that reported that NDP-held ridings received 18.7% of the Rapid Housing Initiative funds. The problem is that only 7.8% of Canadians live in NDP-held ridings. Are NDP-held ridings getting preferential treatment because they're propping up the Liberals?
Good question. Very good question. I can't answer that question. I'm not sure how the decisions, the government is out negotiating. Would you like me to answer about how I think the Housing Accelerator Fund is rolling out, or?
No. Fair enough. But
Rapid housing, pardon me.
Given this statement has been made, would you be able to table with the committee a breakdown riding by riding across the country as to how the Housing Accelerator funds have been rolled out?
That's not our department that would have that. That would be the Ministry of Housing and Transport, and we don't generally track
but
spending by
you are
riding.
here on the housing study, which is about could you speak to whoever is responsible then and arrange for it to be tabled? This is the housing study that you're appearing on, is it not? I'm asking about the Rapid Housing Initiative Program.
Yeah, no, I understand the question. Thanks. My point is, I don't know what data that department carries.
Could you check with them to see if they have it?
I can call them, sure.
Okay, great. Good. Can you let the committee know what they say?
Point of order, Mr. Chair. I think that we have our witness who's indicated his department's not in charge of that. Is that something we could direct our clerk or our analyst to get the information for us?
Yeah, thank you, MP Zerowitz. Would that be, maybe the analyst can look into that?
Yeah, I'd love to have an answer to that question.
Okay. So we will try to get some information.
Okay, same thing though also for, there were concerns discussed in the same article regarding the scoring criteria. It said that the program design did introduce a bias into the program that did indeed see large urban centers where Conservative MPs are generally underrepresented, and New Democrats are significantly overrepresented, receive more attention from the Rapid Housing Initiative, while smaller municipalities receive relatively less. I'm wondering if maybe the clerk could arrange this, or our witnesses, to table with the committee what the scoring criteria is for the Rapid Housing Initiative. Am I seeing nods from somebody?
Unfortunately, I'm going to have the same answer. It's not my program, so I think
Clerk,
somebody else
you will
would have
get that.
to
Okay,
provide that
great.
information.
Now, recently the president of the CMHC, Romy Bowers, told the Senate Finance Committee that CMHC had no plan for building the 3.5 million homes necessary to achieve affordability. The government that you are working for has been in power for 8 years. I know CMHC cautioned the government back in 2019 that this housing issue was going to be a big problem. Why is the head of CMHC, a government agency, saying that there is no plan?
Well, I can't speak for what someone else said, but I would say, I think the government's laid out it.
Perhaps I should ask it this way. Is there a plan?
I think the minister was clear, and I think if you look at what's been in previous budgets and in the fall economic statement, I think there is a plan out to tackle housing supply challenges in particular. I think the minister went through a number of the recent measures to boost housing supply, so I think there is a plan to increase
So what
housing
Ms.
stock,
Bowers
housing
is
supply.
saying is opposite from what the minister is saying.
I guess I would make a slight distinction, which is the quote, and again, I wasn't there, and so I can't confirm this is exactly what Ms. Bowers said, but you're, I think, referring to a study CMHC said about getting affordability back to 2004 levels, I believe.
Yeah.
So I just want to distinguish between a plan to increase housing and improve affordability.
I have quite a bit of ground I'm going to cover. I appreciate your response, though.
Okay.
Just a few minutes ago, the minister said something I thought was curious. She said that her government eliminated the GST on all purpose-built rentals. Was that a true statement?
The GST rebate, yeah.
On all purpose-built rentals? Is that true?
On purpose-built, I'm sort of missing
I'm just asking you a straightforward question. Did your government eliminate the GST on all purpose-built rentals? Yes or no?
Going forward, yes.
Okay, well, that's odd because Bill C-56 doesn't provide a rebate on the building of a single-family home, on duplexes or triplexes. So is the statement, again, that she eliminated the GST on all purpose-built rentals true?
Multi-unit, my apologies. Yeah, you.
So not on all purpose-built rentals?
No, you're very accurate, multi-unit.
Okay, I want to go on to something else in the time I have left. The so-called Canadian Mortgage Charter. A charter is where a government provides a grant of rights to its citizens. Does the Canada Mortgage Charter do that?
The Mortgage Charter explains...
Does it provide rights to individuals?
It does not provide rights. It explains what people are allowed to do.
So why is it called a charter?
For example, communication purpose. I don't think that there's a legal...
The minister just said in her comments, because I was taking careful notes, she said she called these rights. If you go back and you look at what she said, you were sitting right next to her. She said they were rights. So I'm asking you, is it true that the Canadian Mortgage Charter provides Canadians with rights, or was the minister incorrect?
I think that Canadians have the right, I would have used in the common parlance, to ask of certain things from their financial institution.
Okay, let me be more specific. Do they have a legal right?
I believe I've already answered that
no,
question.
They've
got a right under the guidelines of FCAC.
Oh, well, that's good to know. So the Canadian Mortgage Charter grants Canadian citizens rights, correct? Is that your testimony?
No, I'm not sure. Have I said that? I apologize if I've said it's
I'm not clear on what
granted.
you're saying. My question's pretty clear, though. A charter is a document that grants rights from a government to its citizens. Does this charter, like the minister said, grant rights to Canadian citizens?
I'll have to go and check. Yes or no, it does not grant any new rights to Canadian citizens.
Okay. Well, the minister just said that it did.
I'm not sure
I
that's
heard
what
her
the
say. I heard her say it. Everyone was here. Thank you for your testimony.
That's the time. Now we're going to MP Baker, please, for the next 6 minutes.
Thanks very much for being here, Mr. Forbes and Mr. Johnson and Ms. McDermott, and for all of your work in serving Canadians every day. I just wanted to say on the prior exchange, I think it's highly hypocritical to have a Conservative MP try to identify or lament housing construction types that aren't covered by the GST rebate, for which the GST rebate wouldn't apply, when the leader of the Conservative Party actually introduced a private member's bill that would have effectively removed the GST rebate on broad sections of rental housing construction. So it would have been, and we've had witnesses here who've spoken to the fact that Mr. Poilievre's private member's bill, his proposal for the GST rebate, actually would lead to far less construction of purpose-built rental units, and therefore would do a lot less for housing affordability across the country. So I just wanted to point that out because I think it's important that MPs on all sides, when we speak, we're very clear about where we stand. And Mr. Poilievre has made it very clear where his party stands on this, which is he actually believes that the GST rebate shouldn't apply to all the rental housing unit types that we've applied it to. So one of the things we've heard a lot about, the minister's spoken about this, but also I hear it from folks in my community in Etobicoke Centre, which is the issue of short-term rentals. So when I hear about that, I think Airbnb. I know there are other types, but Airbnb is the dominant provider of short-term rentals. And you know, what Airbnb does is this allows people who own a property to rent it out for short-term periods. And one of the challenges that I hear about from my constituents is that takes up a housing unit away from potentially from a long-term rental. And so when people do have short-term rentals, and I appreciate the benefits that has to the landlord and being able to rent it out on the short term, but right now we're facing a crisis of affordability in housing. It's really important that people have access to long-term rentals. So can you talk about what the government is doing to address that very issue and therefore make housing, long-term rentals, more affordable for Canadians?
Yeah, thank you for the question. A couple of things I'd say. I mean, first and foremost, I think you see that municipalities and provinces across the country are stepping in many cases with regulations around what will qualify for short-term rentals, and that's not uniform. Obviously, different municipalities have different approaches. Sometimes it's province-wide. I think in the case of Quebec and BC, what the fall economic statement did primarily was put in place tax measure to kind of reinforce local regulation or rules around qualification for a unit to be eligible as a short-term rental. And basically what we're doing is saying, from the tax system standpoint, your income tax, if you're going to claim any deductions for running a short-term rental unit, it has to be compliant with local or provincial regulations. So it has to be registered and effectively a legal unit to sell, and that's to kind of provide a reinforcement for jurisdictions that choose to go down that road or have chosen to go down that road. And then the second piece is an offer to provide enforcement assistance for municipalities going forward. That program has not been launched yet, but that will be coming, and that's again to help with enforcement of local regulations to kind of that are looking to limit short-term rental usage.
So what I hear you saying is we're working with municipalities who want to limit the number of short-term rentals because they're trying to provide more space for long-term rentals and therefore housing for Canadians. Is that a fair way to summarize?
I think that's a fair way to say it.
Okay, thank you very much. Chair, how much time do I have?
20 minutes. You've got 2 minutes.
So in 2 minutes. Look, I want to, when in my community in Etobicoke Centre, when I'm out there knocking on doors, when I get phone calls from folks every day, one of the issues I hear about the most is how they're struggling with rising interest rates and the cost that they're bearing on their mortgages. And there's the concern is in two sort of categories. One is folks who have variable rate mortgages rather, have seen the cost of servicing that mortgage on a monthly basis go up. But even folks who had fixed mortgages who are renewing or have renewed have had now to renew at a much higher rate. And so and this is costing folks a tremendous amount of money, and for a lot of folks, it's a real struggle. Now, we've, in the fall economic statement, we've brought in a number of mortgage protections, and I'm wondering if you could just speak to, in the remaining minute or so, what some of those most impactful protections are.
Ask my colleague, Mr. Johnson, to take that one.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. Thank you for the question. So I'll speak a bit to the new mortgage charter, which is I think what you're referring to. And I mean, what this really does is it brings together and highlights and increases awareness of certain things that mortgage holders in distress. I mean, this is targeted to people, it's mortgage holders under stress, and this is defined as mortgage holders on their principal residence. So this is not for investors. This isn't for your second home. This is your principal residence. If you are, at serious risk of defaulting and losing your home, these are the things that Canadians should be able to expect from their financial institution. This includes things such as working with your financial institution to discuss lengthening amortization for a fixed period of time. That will reduce your payments, but you want to get back to your amortization as soon as you're able to, because ultimately that's in your best financial health to pay the debt off as quickly as possible. It allows you, if you are at risk of going into negative amortization, which can happen on some of the variable rate loans you were referring to make lump sum payments without paying a fee on that. It requires the financial institutions to reach out 4 to 6 months in advance of your mortgage coming due to discuss your options, to discuss to discuss different things that could be done for you or for those mortgagees or mortgagors in distress. It also waives, or it also suggests that, or says that banks should not be putting interest on interest in the case that there's negative amortization. And finally, looks to banks to waive, and financial institutions in general, they should be clear, to waive fees, to waive fees or penalties on some of these actions that are taken to help alleviate and get the homeowner through this period of stress.
Thank you, and thank you. Yeah, and thank you.
It will help reduce the risk.
Yeah, we're well over time, so thank you. Sorry. Thank you, MP Baker. MP Samari, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. Formal greetings to our witnesses in the second panel. We very much appreciate you being here. Mr. Forbes, first, I'd like to congratulate you on your new role and offer my sincere thanks for being here today. Your predecessor, as far as I know, never visited the Finance Committee. The only time I ever ran into him was on Highway 50 when we happened to be traveling in the same direction. So thank you for coming before the committee to meet with elected officials. I have a few technical points to bring up. I don't expect full answers today. This is more to flag certain issues, so please feel free to provide your answers by email to the committee if you are unable to answer them. Before I get into this, I'd like to make you aware of two elements. I know it doesn't follow under your jurisdiction, but it's part of the problem. First, budget and fall economic statement lockups and media bans. Or rather, the invocation of closure. Bill C-56 was presented under time allocation, which meant that we could not properly do our work as a committee. We were not able to properly question witnesses. So I know you don't have an answer to provide on that. But just could you say, I just like the government to ensure that we can do our job even if closure is invoked. During the pandemic, regarding budget lockups, during the pandemic, people were able to answer questions virtually, but that was appropriate during the pandemic, but it's not appropriate now. When we are unable to get answers from public servants through the phone during lockups, We need people in the room. That's how we could get answers to our questions. Again, I'm not looking for an answer right now, but I just want to flag the issue. Because the government always says yes, 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 but then when the lockup actually arrives, we're disappointed once again. Now, I will move on to my questions. First and foremost, the Quebec Association of Recreational Vehicle Vendors, just regarding things like trailers, the Canada Revenue Agency has determined that if vehicles imported from the United States go through the Ontario, the vendors have to retroactively pay the Ontario tax that has been in place since 2012. Then they are reimbursed afterwards. Again, very specific, but for these vehicle dealers, it creates cash flow issues. I'll get you the specifics by email, and I'll provide them to the minister as well. The Association of Vendors told me that they speak to the Department of Finance. The Department of Finance says, oh, yeah, that's a problem. We should be solving it, but it's not at the top of our list. Could you comment on this? Thank you for that question. That's a completely new issue for me. If you have anything that could provide more information on the issue, I will then be able to get you a more fulsome response. Thank you. After the committee is over, I will send you the details, and I will also make sure they get to the minister herself. Another point. With the issue of Australian and Canadian wine producers, I know we have limited time before us, but when we were talking about this earlier, we were able to talk about cider producers, but we weren't able to talk about other fruit wines, for example, maple cider or pear cider. Is the department working with these small artisanal producers of alcoholic fruit drinks? That's a question for another department. That's for the agriculture ministry would be in charge of that. I'm not exactly sure what is going on with current programming, but that would be a question to ask my colleagues at agriculture. Okay, I will follow up. Just because this was in the recent Budget Implementation Act, I understand. It's just that the exact regulations for specific programs are done by other departments. Okay, that really sheds some light on the issue. This is the first time the department has given me such a clear response. Now, micro distilleries. Here I'm talking about small producers of hard liquor. It's a fairly new field, artisanal distilleries. It's really created a change in rural areas. I'm wondering if the department is planning to put in place a gradual tax for micro distilleries. Craft breweries do have this system set up. They're taxed depending on how much they produce. I'm wondering if the government is planning something similar for micro distilleries. That's not really on my radar. As for that question, it's somewhat straddles the Canada Revenue Agency and our department. I'm not exactly sure if this is under our responsibility or if it's a provincial responsibility. I'm afraid I'm not aware of the current needs and pressures facing this industry. As such, I haven't given it much thought. Thank you, MP Ste. Marie.
Please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I was, glad to see that Mr. Hallan's not the only one fishing for a gold star today. And so I want to thank and commend Mr. Morantz for highlighting the good work of NDP MPs in respect of housing in their riding. If I didn't know him better, I might have thought by his tone he was insinuating something untoward was going on. But I would like to reassure him that that's not the case and share an anecdote with him. When I was first elected in 2015, I ran on reestablishing a national housing strategy, as did, as it happens, what would become the Liberal government. And so one of the first things that I did was I brought together all the nonprofit housing providers in Elmwood-Transcona and nonprofit groups that might have an interest in building housing in the riding. And what we did was we got together over a series of several meetings over months. We found people that had worked at Manitoba Housing, people that had worked at CMHC in the heyday of federal funding for housing. We talked about how the National Housing Strategy pre-1995 worked. We talked about the kinds of things that if you wanted to properly execute a housing project, you have to do, and, looking for land, getting drawings done up, what websites to monitor for funding opportunities as they became available from the federal government. We ended up ultimately doing a roundtable that included a lot of the nonprofit housing providers and umbrella organizations for them across the city of Winnipeg, and brought everybody together to share best practices. Folks who had been part of successful nonprofit housing projects in the city. At that time, folks were working on the Grace Co-op, which has since been built, so we brought them in to talk about what they were doing, even though it wasn't strictly speaking in Elmwood-Transcona, because we wanted to prepare our community as best we could for the funds that had been promised, so that when those funds became available, we would maximize the opportunities for investment in our communities. Mumalak Kakak, who's the previous MP for Nunavut and NDP MP, I know did a tour of 14 or 16 communities in Nunavut documenting the housing need, the mold, the overcrowding, all of the problems. She published that publicly, and again worked with communities to talk about their housing needs and to present those in a coherent, forceful way to the federal government. Jenny Kwan in Vancouver East regularly meets with groups who are providing housing in their community. So I'm not surprised that so much grassroots community effort working with nonprofits who are concerned to deliver affordable housing in their communities has led to a higher level of investment in ridings where there are MPs who see that as part of their job and want to deliver more public resources for affordable housing in their communities. And I want to thank Mr. Morantz for having highlighted that good work and giving me the opportunity to explain how it's done. I would wish for him and for all members at this table that they do that work in their own community, and while government provide more resources so that as more MPs from other parties learn how to do that work in their ridings, resources are available commensurately to increase the amount of social and affordable housing stock. So thank you once again to Mr. Morantz for providing the opportunity for that education about one way that you can be an effective MP for your community. I asked the minister earlier if we could get information on some of those nonprofit projects that have already received federal funding but have stalled out because of high interest rates. Can we get that information?
I'm not sure what information we have. I'm looking at Ms. McDermott to see if she has specific details on that.
Yeah, I would say that these programs generally are run out of CMHC or Housing and Infrastructure Canada, and I know they've been given flexibility in the management of these programs to provide additional support for some of the more vulnerable projects. And as we understand, they are managing those, well. We don't generally get details on the projects themselves, but there may be a level of transparency that's possible, so we can look into that.
Sure. I mean, I think all we really need in terms of information is whatever would be sufficient to cost the application of the GST rebate to those projects. We know that somewhere in the federal government there is a list of all the projects that have been approved for funding. It's impossible to believe that they don't have it. I have asked this question before and gotten soft commitments around providing this information, so I expect at some point the Department of Finance has reached out to partners in government to get that information to be able to come up with a cost estimate.
I think what we should, and it goes back to one of the opening questions, I think what we could get back to with is where this information might be held, and make sure, I guess, that the clerk then can, or somebody can reach out and get it from, I feel a little uncomfortable promising information from another department, but I think we could find it and make sure you get the right.
That sounds good.
If
it gives you any ease of mind, I have been told by folks in the housing minister's office that this information could be provided too.
Okay.
It just hasn't
been
provided.
Let's see what we can do.
So
okay.
let's cross the finish line on that. I would be very grateful for it. Another question about information that was asked previously was just if we could get the deposit amounts for first home buyer savings accounts. So we know the number of Canadians that have opened an account, how much has been deposited in those accounts.
We'll look into what we can make available. I don't have that off the top of my head, but we'll look into that.
Thank you very much. Is the system set up so that government does get that information at some point, or are you guys not concerned to know how much is being deposited in those accounts as a means of evaluating the effectiveness of the program?
So my answer would be I don't know the specifics of this program personally, but I mean, with other similar programs, we would have access to overall amount. I mean, exactly what we could pull out, I would be hard pressed to tell you for sure, but we should be able to pull out some broader numbers in terms of overall value of what's there, growth, et cetera. And so I think we could probably come back.
Okay.
I don't know, to be honest with you, timing of that and exactly what would be there, but we certainly can come back with something.
Thank you, MP Blakey. We are moving into our second round. If I hold really tight to the time, and with the time we gave up for suspension, et cetera, and we started a few minutes late, we can get it in. MP Lawrence, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair, and Merry Christmas to all the panelists, and thank you for your hard work and dedication to the Canadian people. I just want to start out by just a quick remark with respect to Mr. Blakey's soliloquy there. It was once said by a very wise person that progressives define compassion as how many people government can help. Conservatives define compassion as how many people government does not have to help. And so we want to be in a position where Canadians can afford their own food and their own housing, and that's really the difference between our side of the table and the other side. I'm just a simple guy from Orono, Ontario, and so you're as Deputy Minister of Finance, I assume you should have control over the money, right? The dollars that all the taxpayers pay in, that's really your thing, right?
Well, I'm a deputy minister, so I obviously provide advice to government, right?
Perfect.
Policy advice.
Perfect. So, but you should know numbers and things like that, right, Mr. Forbes?
I should know some numbers. I won't know them all for sure, as we all know. But
okay, I'm going to ask you a couple of straightforward. My son got a little shout out from the minister, which I appreciated, and he's learning long division. And so what I do with some of these projects is I just take the amount of money that's dedicated and divide it by the number of units with respect to housing. So in the CMHC 2022 annual report, it said $14 billion had been committed to build 40,000 new units. That approaches $3 million a unit. Could you tell me, this is a fairly straightforward number, of the projects that the government has either loaned money for or just out and out financed completely, how much the average cost of those houses is? Or units in general?
I do not have a number for that.
Could you undertake to provide that number?
$1 per unit of all the investments that the government has
so for every unit that the government has either built, subsidized, or otherwise financially supported, what is the average cost of those units?
Yeah, I'll just maybe add, just to note that really there are a range of programs within the National Housing Strategy.
That's my point.
And obviously some of them provide, like the apartment construction loans. It's sort of in the range of 20,000 per unit. In some of the more deeply affordable programs, the support is obviously a whole lot higher, and so we could give you a range, but I'm not sure an average would be.
Yeah, I don't get stuck on the word average there. So I want the cost per door, though. How much it costs to build these, and whether it's per apartment, per condo, per houses, or an average number. You guys are good with numbers, and I trust you'll be able to provide me with something that just a simple guy from Orono can understand there. If that's fair enough there.
accessible to everybody. Exactly.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Just wanted to talk from there a little bit about the house. My colleague asked a little bit about the first housing program, savings program, and he didn't, in my opinion, get a satisfactory answer from the minister. So we've heard that there were 300,000 accounts started, but how many have had deposits, and what's the average amount or total amount of deposits?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think what I said to Mr. Blakey was I don't have those numbers with me, and to just be clear, I'm not totally sure what data we have at what level, like how current it is, but we will endeavor to get back to you with the data on what we have and share that with you.
Perfect. And then we'll switch gears again there with respect to the charter that has been announced there, which is, I think, almost a misnomer because just to be clear, it says in there that banks should waive fees and lengthen amortization. But if I go into the RBC tomorrow and I say, hey, I've got this charter, I need my amortization extended, what do you think their response is going to be to me?
Well, I would assume you're not a homeowner at risk, maybe. But if you went into RBC and said, look, I'm unemployed, I'm about to lose my house, I can't pay my mortgage, the banks are not interested in repossessing your house.
That's true. But
and they will work with you, and I think that gives you a list of possible options that the bank could present to you while you sort of work your way through this.
But they're under no legal obligation. Like, there's no additional legal obligation. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you, MP Lawrence. Yeah, thank you. And now to MP Thompson, please.
Thank you, and welcome the witnesses. Really, it's a pleasure to have you here today. I think it's important to note to my colleagues' question. When Mr. Poilievre was Minister of Housing, I believe there was $300 million for 99 units. So, I think it's incredibly important that we move forward to build a significant number of units and address the very real challenges that many Canadians, and certainly in my riding, we're seeing a need for multiple types of housing, but certainly focusing on affordable rental, for me, is a really important step forward. I'd like to begin, and I can start with you, Mr. Forbes, but certainly, either of the witnesses to answer on the Canada mortgage bonds, and we've certainly seen the amount from $40 billion to $60. And what I'm really pleased about is the support for builders, and I hear from this from the Construction Association in my riding, their gratitude for this support, and the link to be able to build multi-unit projects, including senior residents, student housing, and certainly expand support across a very complex housing need. Could you speak to that policy and certainly what do you hope to see in terms of units?
Yeah, thank you for the question, MP Thompson. The Canada Mortgage Bond program is a very important one, in particular for the construction of purpose-built multi-unit residential units. One of the biggest costs, obviously one of the biggest challenges in building new units is the cost of financing, is the cost of interest. For borrowers to finance these projects, it's appreciably cheaper, in the order of 100 to 200 basis points, so 1% to 2%, to borrow using government-guaranteed funds, using government-insured funds, going through and getting mortgage insurance, multi-unit mortgage insurance from CMHC. What the lending institutions do is they know that they can fund their mortgages by securitizing them and selling them into the Canada Housing Trust, which in turn sells Canada mortgage bonds to investors all over the world. At $40 billion, the program was very successful, but it was supply constrained. There was more demand for this funding than there was supply. $60 billion opens up another $20 billion. I think this is going to, the CMHC math, and I'll say it's their number, would help finance 30,000 up to 30,000 new units a year. This just essentially opens up the ability for mortgage lenders to provide more insured financing to builders and to provide that break in terms of the financing cost that really sort of helps them get these projects off the ground. Really, this is bringing private capital into the market as well. These bonds are sold into the market globally.
Thank you. And still on the suite of supports, want to reference the Affordable Housing Fund and Apartment Construction Loan Program that I believe is coming out in 2024. Could you speak to that and what you hope to see come through that program?
Sure. So these are existing programs that have been providing support to affordable housing and housing in general for a few years now, but having top-ups to both programs. We have $15 billion top-up to the apartment construction loan program. That should allow an additional 30,000 units, bringing the total to over 100,000, as the minister pointed out. There's also $1 billion of additional investments into the Affordable Housing Fund, which used to be the co-investment fund, and that is expected to support an additional 7,000 or so new units, and that should be on top of the existing fund of $13 billion, which was slated to deliver over 60,000 units. And that's new units, and in addition, repairs of 240,000 units. So but basically what we're talking about is just additional funding to support additional housing being built.
Thank you, MP Thompson. And now to MP Samadi for 2.5 minutes, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. The government had announced it would be providing $1 billion for breakfasts. Since then, the funds have not been released. I looked for it in the fall economic statement. I didn't see it. I get that Bill C-59 was complex, but I still couldn't find the funds in there. So I wonder if the department could talk a little bit about this. Will this promise be implemented soon, or have you forgotten about it? Well, I can't speak on behalf of the government, except to say that certain decisions are being made for the 2024 budget. As such, some things that have not yet been announced may be included in the upcoming budget. I'm not going to give a yes or no, but maybe. So basically, it's a Liberal campaign promise. I get it. Thank you. In Bill C-59, and I asked this to the minister earlier, for housing, there's a lot of elements that seem similar to measures in Bill C-256, the Conservative Leader's Private Members Bill. I wonder if you could say which elements are similar between the two pieces of legislation. We never carried out a comparison between the two pieces of legislation, if that's what you're asking. Just to clarify, one element that I'm thinking of is the idea of telling municipalities, if you don't build enough housing, we're going to cut your infrastructure and public transit funding. When I looked in the fall economic statement, that's what I saw. Thank you for that question. I believe the answer is, and the minister brought this up earlier, our approach to municipalities is more collaborative than what you're saying. We do our best to work with municipalities to ensure that local bylaws incentivize construction of new housing. That's how, and also we're not in charge of that. It's the Department of Housing. But the government attempts to work collaboratively with municipalities. Okay, thank you.
Blakey, please, for 2.5 minutes.
Mr. Chair, there's been a little bit of talk about the spirit of Christmas around the table today, and in that spirit, I'm happy to share my time with Mr. Morris.
Merry Christmas, Mike. Thank you, Mr. Blakey. I guess for officials, I'd like to understand better when it comes to what we need to do to address the financialization of housing. I have a concern that we didn't see enough in the fall economic statement when it comes to measures to address the ways that homes in this country are increasingly being turned into commodities by large corporate investors and less seen as homes for people to live in. And as I've shared with Mr. Forbes before, I've put forward a motion that would look to start to address this by removing some of these incentives for real estate investment trusts, for example, and directing those investments to build the affordable housing we need. My question as a starting point, first of all, are you aware of any measures in the fall economic statement that would address the financialization of housing?
Well, I think I'd go to the question of affordable housing or financial. If there's a question of affordable housing, I think Ms. McDermott talked a bit of some of the measures to boost supply of affordable housing that the government's supporting.
So if I can clarify, I'm happy to have any folks answer the question. My question is whether there are any measures in the fall economic statement that would remove incentives that are currently in place that corporate real estate investors are benefiting from in order to turn homes in this country into commodities. For example, and I would share with you, is the incentive currently in place that offers tax exemptions for real estate investment trusts. Are you aware of any measures in the fall economic statement that would address the financialization of housing?
I think the only thing I'd point to, we discussed a bit, was the Airbnb or the short-term rental tax measure and enforcement fund would be in that vein. Would be the one thing that comes to mind. There's nothing on real estate investment trusts in the fall economic statement.
Great. And can I ask whether officials in the minister's office have been seeking input and advice from the Department of Finance with respect to actions they may take with respect to financialization of housing?
So what we would, just to maybe clarify process, I mean, as we look forward and think about housing challenges, we will, as officials, provide advice to the minister going forward about ways to improve both overall housing supply, as I think is kind of the theme in the fall economic statement of building more housing more quickly, and also with a focus on affordability. I mean, I think as the minister talked earlier. So in that context, you know, I think we'll run through a gamut of issues, and that could include, but it will depend a little bit on exactly both issues like the overall fiscal room, timing, et cetera, that we'll consider.
That is well past the time, yeah, and we're really running against the clock here. So we're going to MP Chambers, but thank you, and thank you to MP Blakey for giving you that time. So, and now to MP Chambers for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome. Many of the financial institutions are taking significant provisions for increasing loan loss provisions. 4 out of 5 are double, in some cases triple this year what they were previous year, except for one. And I won't name that institution, but you may know who I'm speaking about. I'm just curious, is the Finance Department in regular discussion with these banks about the size of their loan loss provisions and what may be driving these higher provisions?
Let me start, and then I'll turn to Graham if he wants to add. I mean, I'd say we talk to the financial institutions regularly, obviously ourselves, and also with our colleagues, the superintendent of financial institutions, and so we do talk to them about overall conditions, what they're seeing, their concerns, kind of what they see forward-looking. I'm not involved in any specific conversations about, their precise loan loss provisions, but I don't know, Graham, if there's anything you want to add to that.
I mean, and as the Deputy Minister said, we are in very frequent contact with the FIs and also with OSFI. Certainly it's OSFI's main responsibility to ensure that the capital levels, liquidity levels are sufficient, that these banks remain stable and robust and able to withstand shocks. That's very much the case. I mean, I don't want to get too technical, but notwithstanding the loan loss provisions, banks have CET1 capital ratios well above 12%, which is very strong. In terms of what's driving them, I think that's also being watched. Again, I won't run through the gamut, but pain points include commercial real estate, things like auto loans, things where you would expect higher interest rates to bite. I would point out for mortgage loans, arrears remain at extremely, extremely low levels, and in fact lower levels than pre-pandemic. So there's not been stresses in that area, and that certainly for a number of the larger Canadian financial institutions is by far the largest asset class on their books.
I understand. Thank you very much. And I know the point about the default rate being historically very low. But the lessons from the United States in 2007 were that default rates were incredibly low until they weren't. And so if the banks are kind of increasing these loan loss provisions significantly, they're being effectively told by OSFI to stop lending or to slow their lending. We're pushing people out of the highly regulated space and into the what I'll call the shadow banking sector, which people are familiar with that term. I'm a bit nervous about OSFI really clamping down on the regulated space and the unregulated space getting bigger. My sense is that if there's a problem, it will emanate from the unregulated space first. So I suspect that may be a better question for OSFI, but just that's something that concerns me. Is the Finance Department aware of the new NRCan building code guidelines, Canada's building code?
Maybe you could, to some extent, yeah.
Well, so they've been released, right? So they were initially proposed in 2017. They've been released now. We're talking about affordability in housing. There are reports that suggest that the NRCan building code guidelines are going to add up to $50,000 per unit in costs for every home. Like, is that a number that finance has tried to determine on their own?
I don't know where those numbers, thanks for the question. I'm not sure I've seen those numbers around the 50,000 costs. I mean, I'm happy if someone wants to share with me, we can look at those.
I would just recommend that you might want to ask that question about how much that these new building code regulations would cost. And I'll leave you with two other recommendations. We should stop allowing borrowed money for down payments, i.e. using the equity in one property as a down payment in another. The other would be allow all Canadians access their first home buyers plan from the RSP to help delever, which will cost the government zero money, right? It will cost the government zero money, something that you could do for Canadians. And my final question in 20 seconds was just the minister and I kind of didn't quite get to the bottom of it. Does the minister provide the final sign-off on an investment from the Canada Growth Fund?
No.
No.
The Canada Growth Fund is independent in their decision making.
Oh, thank you very much. So the minister does not provide.
That's the time. Yeah.
Well, that was very close, Mr. Chair.
I know, but I had to hold everybody right to the time on this round. That's what I said at the start. I'm sorry, but yeah. We usually do allow for a little bit more, but MP Zarowitz, 5 minutes. Yeah.
Oh. Sorry, I didn't hear my name, so I didn't say anything.
Yes, MP Zarowitz,
thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much for being here to answer our questions. I think many of us are worried about those who are trying to renew mortgages, so we're getting a lot of questions about that. And so we've been talking about the mortgage charter that's been introduced in the fall economic statement. And maybe my question is, how does our federal government, or how will we, or are we planning to monitor financially regulated financial institutions? So how are we going to be monitoring the implementation, the compliance of the relief measures like those that are outlined in the mortgage charter?
I mean, I won't repeat all the aspects of the charter because I did that earlier. It is designed to work sort of in conjunction with the FCAC guidelines, mortgage guidelines, which were put out in July. And I think it is through FCAC that Canadians who feel that they aren't being well treated by their financial institutions should seek some assistance. And as was announced in the fall economic statement, we are moving to a single, essentially a single ombudsman, a single point for an external complaints body where these issues can be addressed.
But so I appreciate that, but there's not a report that we're asking back from financial institutions. It's just
financial institutions will report back to FCAC regularly,
okay. And they'll let us know how many people are actually.
I would encourage you to reach out to FCAC, but yes, there's reporting going back to FCAC.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. One of the other things that has come up quite a bit, and I'm not quite sure it's anything that is. That your department's directly dealing with. But what we're hearing is that there are a number of measures at the provincial level that's actually stopping affordable housing from being available or taking affordable housing stock off the marketplace. I'll give you an example. So in Ontario, we don't have a vacancy rent control. Does your department actually gather data on how much affordable housing that actually takes off the marketplace? Is that data that you actually collect and follow so that we can have some policy prescriptions around it, or is that not something that you're actually looking at?
I'll maybe turn to Ms. McDermott. I mean, generally, this would sit with the housing department, but Alison may have more to say on this.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that the Housing and Infrastructure Canada, CMHC, and ourselves to a degree, we certainly monitor and are with interest some of the developments on the provincial front, but we don't have a specific reporting duty associated with that.
Okay.
And just to note that the Housing Accelerator Fund is obviously an instrument that's put in place to try to encourage those at lower levels of government to introduce policies that will be supportive of housing supply and removing impediments.
And I appreciate that. And I'm going to ask one more question that you may or may not be gathering information, but I just think as we're looking at policy prescriptives, and we're always looking to improve, our federal government has allocated over $80 billion to the National Housing Strategy. And I know that's largely in housing and in infrastructure. But again, finance does a lot of the policy prescriptions. Are we evaluating which programs are more successful than others so as to look for how is it that maybe we could start redirecting some of the funds from one area that's not being used very much or very efficiently to other funds? Can you maybe talk to that?
I mean, my general answer is yes. I mean, that's what we do. We try to make sure that dollars and programming are used effectively and that we're seeing results. And so we do that, kind of regularly. And I'll maybe turn to Alison if there's specifics on the housing front. But what I would say, one observation would be obviously some of these things have long time frames, right? And so it's difficult to know sort of, we're talking here about, we were talking earlier about, incentives that improve the financial, the financing of multi-unit rental construction. Well, that's a multi-year process of putting your financing together, permitting, doing. So exactly the efficacy of those, the evaluation of their effectiveness will take a number of years, right? Before you actually, you can look at things in the middle. But I don't know, Alison, if there's anything specific on the housing side.
And if you could tell us which programs have been most successful, that'd be helpful too.
Yeah, I think I'll stop short of that, but I will note that there have been sometimes the adjustments that happen between programs within, and even sometimes within program volets, like components of programs, and we're often involved in supporting the minister to get authorities to make those kinds of adjustments. But they generally would be around, one program maybe has a bunch of an amount of funding allocated and it's not using that funding at the same rate, so we might transfer that over to funds which are using up, or programs which are using up funds more rapidly. And if most of this does get reported in budget documents, so you can look at the history of those changes.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you, MP Zerowitz, and we want to thank our officials. Thank you for appearing. Thanks for your testimony on this study. On a point of order?
Yeah, and you can release the witnesses. I just have a brief
point of order. Go ahead.
Point of order. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just in the last meeting, you're supposed to have consent as a chair before adjourning it. I was clearly audible, saying point of order, and you refused to recognize me. I would appreciate an apology and
MP Lawrence,
a commitment that this type of lack of decorum won't occur again.
MP Lawrence would. So I looked around the room. It looked like everybody was ready to go. We had concluded the meeting, and that's
on that point of order. There's video evidence confirmed by the clerk that I said point of order.
Well, MP Lawrence, I looked across the room. I saw that everybody was ready to go, and I adjourned as I usually do. But shall we adjourn today, members? Shall we adjourn? Yes. Okay. I'm looking around. We're adjourned.